Hey everyone, today I'm going to be showing you how to make a simple Pokedex app using the PokeApi API and fetch calls. So to start the project off, we're going to link the CSS and JavaScript files to the index.html, so everything will be connected. So let's start by creating the link tag and connecting the styles.css, and then once we do that, we're going to create the script tag, and the script tag is going to have the sources, the index.js. So now let's start by making sure these are all connected. So we're going to go to the CSS and we're going to do body, and let's just change the background color to black. There, it's connected. So we can go ahead and delete this for now because we aren't going to come back to the CSS till towards the end. So now let's go to the index and let's just console.log hello world. Save that, and yep, we're all connected on that part. So now we can start building out the JavaScript page connecting to the API. Okay, so now we can start building out the JavaScript page, get connected to the API, so that way we can start pulling the information, getting the Pokemon data, and eventually render it to the HTML page. So to start off, I like to create an init function, which you can name it whatever you want, but I like to use it because it is the main function that runs on screen load, and within this you can order the functions how you want them to be loaded. So here we have the basic structure, and now let's create the first API call. So the first API call is going to be called fetch all Pokemon. This is going to be an async function, so it's going to let us, I want to spell that right, it's going to let us query all of the Pokemon names. So with this, we'll be able to get the Pokemon names from the PokeApi API. So if we go here, we're going to use this link right here. It'll get the first 151 Pokemon by name. So we just go ahead and copy that in, and we're going to do let res equals fetch, and we're going to plug in the URL, and we want to make sure we put await in front of that fetch, and then we're going to do data equals res.json. We're doing res.json because we want the response from this fetch to be returned as JSON, so we can actually access. If not, then you would just be getting a promise returned, which wouldn't help you in any way. So let's see what we get when we run. We save this, and we want to make sure we run it in the init function so that it will run on screen load. So here we have the results, all 151, the first 151 Pokemon. So it starts with Bulbasaur all the way down and ends with mu. So there's the first call we have to make done. The next step in this process is we're going to have to pull a single Pokemon, because that's where all the data is from the PokeApi API app. So for example, we go to Pokemon /Ditto, that's where we get all of Ditto's information. So this function would be const fetch single Pokemon. This one will be async as well. And we're basically going to copy and paste the fetch all Pokemon. But the difference is we're going to use the backticks, and we're going to copy this link in, and we're going to do $ brackets. This will allow us to put JavaScript within the string. So we'll need to do Pokemon, and this will allow us to plug in the Pokemon name we get from fetch all Pokemon and plug it into the URL. So for example, if we change that to Pikachu, and I'm doing this to differentiate the console logs. And yep, we forgot to run the function. Single Pokemon. So here you can see we have Pikachu's individual data. But how do we plug this in to this function to get each and every Pokemon's data? Well, that'll be the next function that we do. But first, we want to write it out. And this one will be fetch each Pokemon, because we're getting each data point from the fetch all Pokemon list. So this one will be async as well. And we're going to be inserting a for loop, because we're going to be taking the array from this data point, from this data variable, and plugging it into the for each loop. So let's start by constructing the for loop. So less than, and we're going to have to add the Pokemon parameter to this as well. This can be named anything. I'm just picking Pokemon because we're making a Pokedex, and we're querying for each Pokemon, so it just makes sense in my head. So Pokemon.length, and then I++. Now for this, we're going to need to push the information into a new array. So let's go ahead and make a global variable called AR, short for array. You can name it anything you want. I just picked array for short. So here we're going to be doing AR dot push, and you want to make sure you put await And then we're going to call the fetch single Pokemon function, and we're going to plug in Pokemon I. And then that should be good. We need to remove that from there. We were just testing it out. So let's see what information logs when we run this, and we want to make sure to run fetch each Pokemon in the fetch all Pokemon. And we're going to transfer data.results. And to show where we get data.results, so this section right here would be the data, and then we go into the data and query the results. So data.results would be all of this information, and we'd be plugging it into fetch all Pokemon. And we want to make sure we're only getting the names, because each index in the array comes with two objects, the name and the URL. We only want to pick the name. So here we have fetch all Pokemon, which gets all the first 151 names. We take each index and run it through using the fetch single Pokemon. And I forgot to change that back. We will get the individual data for each Pokemon. So when we save that, I seem to have broke it. Oh yes, I need to return the data. What's going on here? Give me 1 second while I problem solve this. I see the issue here. I accidentally put all Pokemon right there. So there we go. So here we have all of the names, and we have into this new array each Pokemon, Bulbasaur, and all of their data. So now we can access all of these data points, and finally we can start rendering each Pokemon to the page. So to render the Pokemon to the page, we're going to need to create a new function, which I'm going to call show Pokemon. And we're going to plug in another parameter called Pokemon again. And we're going to make the output, and we're going to query for the class the HTML tag that we're going to input all of the data into. So document.query selector, and we're going to call this output. So we need to go to the index.html and create that section. Class is output. So we have the output, and we're going to create a map function. And this map function will loop through the Pokemon array that we insert into it as a parameter. And here, you could use any word. You don't have to use the word each. But that's effectively the response. So that's each index will be the each. So it'll be, for example, if we used each.name, it would be the each would be one of these objects within the array, and then the dot name would be the Bulbasaur, or the Ivysaur, or the Pikachu. So we go into the map, and we return some HTML. And you want to use the backticks for this. And we're just going to create a basic HTML structure. And this is what will be rendered to the page. So we're going to start by rendering the Pokemon names. And you want to make sure to join them together, because if you don't do join, they appear with commas because you're basically rendering an array. So you don't want to have the commas in between each index. And we're going to return the output .inner HTML, and we're going to return that in the map. So to do this, we're going to plug the show Pokemon function into the fetch each Pokemon, and we're just going to run the array. And when we save that, we get all of the names. And from here, it's just styling it however you want, but for the sake of this video, we're just going to do a pretty standard, just each one's going to be basically its own card. And it's going to hold the name, the picture, and the types. So this is going to be each.sprite.front default, and I'll show you where I'm getting that from. So you go here into the return JSON, you go into the object, and you go each, you find sprites, and then you do .front default. And you want to make sure to leave an alt, and we're just going to have that as the name as well. And oh, we got an error. Each.sprite. Yep, it's plural. And there we go. We are rendering the name and the image so far. And to continue, we're going to make another div that's going to act as a parent div to the types, because each Pokemon has a different number of types. It's usually, or it's either 1 or 2 for the first 151 at least. So we're gonna do a span, close the span out. So we're gonna do each dot types, and we're gonna make sure to get the first index of that types array, type dot name. So for example, we go each into the individual, then we go into the types array, and you'll see this one only has one, but like Bulbasaur will have 2 indexes in the types array. And then we go find type, and then we do the type dot name, and it'll be water. So when we save this, there, we get grass, grass, fire, fire, water, water. And for the second one, it gets a little more complicated. So we're going to be using a ternary operator to basically filter out because in the map, if you just do, for example, the logical way would be this, where we just get the second one. But if we do that, we get an error because on the ones you don't have a second index, it errors out because it returns undefined. So to get around that, we need to do the ternary. And so to do that, we do each dot types dot length is greater than 1. We return the name, and if not, we return a blank string. So it's if the each dot types array is longer than 1, so it has more than 1 index, then we return the second type, and if not, we return an empty string and we only get the first type. And there you go. Grass, poison, fire, fire, and then Charizard goes to fire, flying, ground, and poison. So that is the tutorial. Thanks for watching. I apologize if I'm a little awkward. This is my first video ever, so I'm just getting comfortable on camera. So as future videos come out, I'm sure I'll be easier to watch. But from here, you can edit the CSS however you want. For example, I chose this, pretty simple, and here's the CSS for that. Just 32 lines of code, and you have a pretty organized Pokedex. So hopefully this tutorial helped you, and I hope you can make a Pokedex of your dreams. Leave a comment if you have any questions, and hit the subscribe button. Thank you.